Etymology number 10. I think we can probably do 20 or 30 classes on this. And in the seminary, one of the required advanced studies was you had to take English grammar also, but etymology was the kind of the epitome of the study of the English language, basically. Because if you don't study English etymology, you don't know what English means. And one of the guidebooks I've got here is Word Origins and Their Stories. See, here's another one. History and English Words by Barfield. And then Funk and Wagnall, Encyclopedia and Dictionaries. The writer of that is the one that I have on idioms in the English language, which I don't have right here right now, but we will go into that also. That's very interesting. What idioms in English, what they mean, where they come from. And they're all over. One of the things that we're going to study today is something that we use every day in the English language, and we don't know what it means. Most of you out there won't know what it means. I was taught this here in Fish Lake Valley. My teacher here taught me this, Orville Taylor. And I was in the 5th grade, I think, 5th and 6th grade, beginning in 7th grade or somewhere around there in his classes. So I had him for 2 or 3 years. And he was, we went from the 5th grade to the 9th grade in that class. There were 2 classrooms. One classroom was the 1st grade to the 4th, no kindergarten. And the next grade was from 5th to the 9th grade. And we had the 9th grade there because the teacher's son was in the 9th grade. And there wasn't any place to send them to. You had to go, and they had to go in boarding school at that time to go to high school. So here on page 207 in my Latin for today. Now, unless you knew Greek and Latin and Hebrew, you were not considered educated at all. You had no education. George Washington, I've said in the past, considered himself to be illiterate because he did not know the classic language. He did not know Greek and Latin and Hebrew. And those things were, and the Hebrew because of the Hebrew Bible. They studied the Bible a lot back then in colleges. Yeah. Now today, a lot of the students when they graduate from high school, they can hardly read English, let alone what we're studying here. Requirement in high school at one time was at least 1 year of Latin. Over 50% of the English language is Latin. 5,400 words are English and Anglo-Saxon. 10,400 words are Latin. 2,200 words are Greek. And then there's French and German also that come into our language. And a spattering of this and that. Even Indian comes into American Indian in Lakota. Now, have you ever thought about the names of the months? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. What do they mean? Why do we have them? Well, at one time, the calendar started with March. So March would be number 1 month. I bet you didn't know that. Okay? March was number 1 month. That's when that was where it started. But we're going to go back with January. And we're going to look at it. What we call the Latin or the Roman calendar, it is a solar calendar and different than a lunar calendar. The Jews and the Muslims today, of course the Muslims are from the same source, they go by the lunar calendar. And it is not as many days as the solar calendar. The names of the months are all derived from Latin. every day of the month is, or every month of the year is derived from Latin and connected with Latin words. They're names of Roman gods of whom you have heard, and several of the Roman numerals appear in these names. Roman numerals basically are Greek letters. X and I, V and all of that, that's Greek. But it was brought over into Latin. January, Janus. January. January is from Janarius, which in turn is derived from Janus, the god of doorways. January, Janua, door. And the beginning, and of the beginnings in general. Now this is where later on they named it. First of all, it started off with March, but now they're going to start off with January. And January means the door, or the beginning of the year. Janus, the god of doorways. Now February. February is from Fabuarius, derived from the word meaning to purify. And January and February are very cold months, especially February. February is some of the coldest months in Fish Lake Valley. I've seen it way down 30, 40 below zero here at times in the past, not now, but back then. And everything, all the bugs die. All the vermin die from that, and it purifies the earth with that cold. It freezes everything. February is from February is derived from the word and meaning to purify, since the month was the time for purification also in Roman culture, the time of purification. March is from Martius. Martius. Mattia, the name Mattia comes from this also in Spanish. March, and people's name are March. One of my students was Dr. John March. March is a word that goes through many languages. March is from Martius, derived from Mars, the god of war. Mars, the god of war. I remember when I used to come here to Fish Lake Valley, I still do, when I came in late the other night, I saw Mars up there shining like a tail light in the sky. The red planet Mars. And it's the color of blood, the color of the shedding of blood, the month of war. Mars, the god of war. April is from Aprilis, derived, which is somewhat uncertain. It may be derived from apere, means to open. As the earth begins to open in the spring, in the month of April, things begin to change. Trees begin to start showing buds in the month of March. March. Or April, that is. April to open. Apertere. To open. That's when, in some places, people plant. Now, here in Fish Lake Valley, they told us not to plant a garden until after the first week of June. But now it's somewhat different. Our weather has changed quite a little bit. We have a lot of people's names. Remember, we have a girl's name, April? April? Now look at May. Now, we have a lot of names, a lot of women by the name of May, don't we? The May Company. May this, May that, May. Marilyn, what is your name?
Marilyn.
Marie. Okay, Marilyn Marie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My mother's name was Faye Marie, and May also is part of that. May is from Maius, derived from Maia, the mother of Mercury. The mother of Mercury, the goddess. Of course, now this is, someplace I have a book about the history and the origin of all the Roman gods and goddesses. June now, June. June comes from Junius, The name of a famous Roman family. Junius, a famous Roman family. So now have you learned a little something so far about the names? June, and then July. Where do you think July might come from? Just think about it for a while. A lot of people's name were July. Do you remember in some of the movies you've seen in the 1800s, a lot of men were named July. They had the first name July. July comes from Julius. Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar. The name which Julius Caesar gave to this month in honor of his family name, and he reformed the calendar. And that's when the calendar was reformed by Julius Caesar. Now we have the name August. My uncle, I had an uncle by the name of William Augustus. The term for August, when we talk about August, I had a good friend of mine one time. I had a lot of recordings from his ministry, and I put them, I think about 6 of them, on my website. And he wrote me a letter. He said, "You've put me in such august company." August company. It meant royal company. It meant high company. August. From Augustus, the name given to it by Augustus Caesar. And by the way, all the Caesars were called August or Augustus because that was a term of high. It was like royalty, like sir. September. Now September changes. September does not mean like the rest of them does. September changes. Preserves the original spelling. It is derived from septem, which is 7. It was the 7th month. The 7th month. Remember, I told you the month started in March. The early Roman year began with March. September was originally the 7th month. And who changed it? Huh? All right. The Caesar, Augustus, changed it. So September, October. Now, I have some old guns. And these old guns have barrels that are not round. They're octagon barrels, or octagon barrels. It means they're 8-sided. October means 8, derived from the original Roman calendar. At month number 8. And they just kept it as October. October. How about November? November is from November, derived from Novem, 9. November means number 9. And then December. What do you think December means? You ever heard of the name decimals? Decimals? We have inches in America. When I grew up, we didn't study decimals at all. I had one of my teachers tell me, if God wanted us to go by tens, he would have had 10 apostles, not 12. That was the story. 12 inches, not centimeters. Centimeters goes by tens. We go by 12 inches in America. That's what we did. Of course, now everything's going to decibels. But decimal means 10. It derives 10 because that was the 10th month. December was the 10th month. And that's when the hard winter begins. Caesar, in his reform of this calendar, began the year with January 1st, thus destroying the numerical significance of the names of the last 4 months of the year. Now, maybe you will remember these names of the months a little differently than what you have in the past. Let's go back and look at some vocabulary words now. How our if I can find it over here, our vocabulary. Now let's look at some Latin words and see how we derive our language from Latin, so you will understand the English language better, and when you preach the Word of God, you'll be able to do that better. Portat. Portat. Portat means to carry. Portat means to carry. What English word do you think we have from portat? Portable. 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 You have the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of those lived a nomadic, portable life. Everything they had was portable. It was movable. It would be able to be carried from one place to the other. If you ever watch the movie Grass, you'll see those ancient people, basically Persian, and you'll see them carrying everything they have on donkeys and camels and whatever, all those great big elaborate flowing tents. They wrapped them all up and put them on their animals, and they moved. That's what you call a portable lifestyle, a nomadic lifestyle. Bidet. Bidet. B-E-D-E-T. Bidet. Bidet means to see. What word in English do you think we have from bidet? You look at it every day. You look at a video every day. You look at televisions every day. That is a video. You see it. Bidet. How about a mott? A mott. A mott means to love. To love. Like or love. Like philo and agapeo in Greek. And storgeo. Delectat. Delectat. In English, what words in English do you think comes from delectat? How about the word delight? I am delighted to see you. Delectable. That means pleases and delights. How about habet? Habet. That means to hold on to. Hold on to. Curat. Curat means curator. And curat, a curator, is someone that takes care of something. You got a curator of a museum, that's the one that takes care of the museum. You have a librarian, basically, there's a curator of the library. Serva. Serva. Serva means servant. Maid servant. Marilyn said she thought she was a maid servant when she was growing up. Serva. It comes from serva. Our word servant means to serve, to slave. Now let's go on a little bit further here and look at some more words and their origins. Siéntate in Spanish comes from this word. Sitio, sitere. That means the seat, it means a seat, and it means to sit down. And mensa, the word mensa. Mensa is a table. Statua. Statua is a statue. And it is a, when you have a statue, you have a wording set down as a law, a statute. Fabula. Fabula. What word in English comes from the Greek word or the Latin word fabula? The tales, the fables, fables, story. Fabula, the name fable in English comes right from it. It means a story. The fables of the Roman culture, of the Roman gods, the fables. Narrare, narrare. That means to narrate, to tell. When you look at a movie, sometimes of a documentary, you'll have somebody that is the narrator. That comes from narrare and narrare. I had a good friend, Bill Moore was his name. He went by Bimo. He sang in the, he had such a beautiful voice. He sang on Broadway but he had one of the best speaking voices that I've ever heard. He used to come to my house on Sunday after church out when I lived in Valley Acres. He lived in Taft, California. And he did a lot of documentaries of the mansions in the South. He did a documentary for the museum in Taft, and his voice was just beautiful. He was a great narrator. Narrator tells the story. Ridere and ridio. Ridere and ridio. Have you ever had somebody to deride you? Deride, what does deride do? That means to laugh at you, to make fun of you, ridicule you. Ridere, ridio, deride, or ridicule, or laugh at you. That's what it actually means. Via. And many of our signs that we go down the street and we see signs up advertising things, and we also see street markers. And one of the street markers we see a lot is via. 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 What does the word via mean? Via, it means a way or street or road. So when you see the word via, that means road. How about Genua? Genua. What English word do we have in Genua? Well, the word Genua in Latin actually is a doorkeeper. It's somebody, it's like a butler or a janitor of a home. It is like a doorkeeper or a janitor of a school or a library. Janitor, doorway or doorkeeper. Voco, vocare. Vocal and vocare, we get the word vocal from it. We have the word convoke with it. It means to call or to summon. When somebody gets up and leads a college or something, they convoke. They verbally call the group together and tell the story of what they're there to do. Procere and popero, it means to hurry, to hasten, to hurry and to hasten. Going a little bit further in this class, and we'll look at it. This is easy. Marilyn, this one's easy. Femina. What do you think femina means? Femina.
Fermina?
Uh-huh. Femina.
Fermina.
Feminine.
Oh.
Feminine. Femina means feminine. It means a woman. Feminine. Feminine. Rosa. Rosa ought to be easy. Rosa means red, a rose. We get our word rose from rosa. Rubra. Another word, rubra. A ruby is what color?
Red.
Red. There's another one, ruby or red. Rose, rosa, and ruby. And then we have the word alba. Alba. The word in Latin is Laban. In Greek, it is Lucas, white. Alba, Laban, albino, white. White. I remember when I went to school, there was an albino girl in a class. She was just, her eyes were hardly, almost just clear blue, almost, like a clear blue. Pecuniary. Pecuna. That means money. We have the word desideria. Desideria, you had an uncle named Desideria, didn't you, Mary? Desiderius. Your uncle Desiderius. It means to wish or desire. To wish or desire. When he was born, they said, we got what we wished or desired. A boy. Apropin. Apropere. That means to approach. We get our word approach right out of that. Demonstro, demonstro, demonstrare. That means to demonstrate. To point out, to show always. If you go to Costco and some of these big stores, they will have a demonstrator there. That comes from demonstro. And they will get out there and show you how to cook the food and say, here, it's free. They want you to buy that food. You're demonstrating that food. When you used to go into a store, I remember when microwaves came out. See, I'm old. I remember when microwaves came out, and one of the things that we went down to Montgomery Ward's. Montgomery Ward's had microwaves. Remember that, Marilyn? Did you buy your Amana microwave, that Amana radar range? Did you buy that at Montgomery Ward's? Because they were one of the first ones to get it. Montgomery Ward's and Sears had them. They weighed a ton because they were full of transformers and great big tubes. We got one out here in the storage unit. It was a demonstrated. What they did is they took out gingerbread mix and they put it in a little glass container, and it was all liquid, and they put it in there, and just a few minutes you could get out here and they had real butter and everything, and you could try this. And I remember my stepdad, Dusty, he saw that, he said, I want that, and he bought one and brought it home. Because he saw how quickly he could make gingerbread. Banana bread, all of that he cooked in this microwave. Because they demonstrated it to him. Demonstro, demonstrare. All right, how about semper? Semper Fi. Always, always. Semper means always. It's an adverb. Rogo, rogare. Now, what English word would we have from rogo, rogare, and rogo? It's interrogative. Our word interrogative. It means to ask. It means to interrogate. When you interrogate somebody, it comes from rogu and rogare. You interrogate them. Interrogato. Numero. Numere. That's easy, isn't it? That means numeral. It means to count out. Numeral, you count out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You count them out. When somebody in the ring is boxing and the guy falls on the road, falls on the canvas there, they begin to count, don't they? They get numero, numerare, the numeral. It means they begin to count him out. And by the end of the 10 count, he's out. And then clamo or clamore. Clamo or clamore. What do you think we have from that word?
Clamor?
Exclaim. When you exclaim, when you have an exclamation, when you cry out, that word comes from clamo and clamore. You have a clamorous situation. People are crying out. Crying out. That is a little lesson in our English language and in the Bible too. The Bible has some words in it that when you break it into English, you don't understand it. Now, one thing in customs and traits of people at that time, Jesus said one time, he said, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get in heaven. Now, some people say that the eye of the needle was a doorway when you went into the city, and there was a little bitty doorway, a big doorway, and a little bitty doorway. For you to get in the city, all the animals had to crawl on their knees through that doorway. It could be done, but it was very hard to do. You had to unload the animal and carry stuff in there. But in Luke, in his gospel, he tells us a different story. Luke uses the eye of a surgical needle. Not the eye of the needle, not the doorway, but he uses the eye of the surgical needle. He said it is easier for the camel to go through the eye of a surgical needle than for a rich man to get in heaven. That's what you call, it is a hyperbole. It's impossible. It's an exaggeration. But it just means it's very difficult for a rich man to get in heaven because he trusts in himself and not in God. Another thing, there's another hyperbole. This is a figure of speech. It comes from a period of time, and it's figure of speech and an exaggeration. And Jesus used many exaggerations to bring about a point. He said, you strain out the gnats, but you swallow a camel. That's another hyperbole. You strain out the gnats. Now, let's go back to see what happened. A gnat is an unclean thing. You're not supposed to, a Jew was not supposed to eat bugs. Not like a gnat. A gnat was an unclean thing. Now, if you go back into Islam, a gnat is a little fly. And a fly in Islam, Muhammad would tell you, now this is ridiculous, but this is what he said. He said, if a fly gets in your food or gets in your drink, what you do is one side, one wing is poison and the other wing is the antidote to the poison. What you do is you take the whole fly and dip the whole fly in your food and your whole fly, and the antidote is there so it won't make you sick. Now we know that that is ridiculous, but that was what he said. That's the cure for a fly getting in your food. You just dip both wings in there, you know. It's easier for a rich man to get into heaven, harder for a rich man to get into heaven for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And he said, you strain out the gnats. In wine, you sometimes have gnats. So the Jews would take a cloth and they would put it over a jar and pour their wine into that jar through that cloth, and they would get all the gnats out of it. But he said, you strain out the gnat, but you swallow with one gulp a camel. Hoof, hair, eyeballs, bones, and all. Without cooking it, you swallow the camel down. Now that's impossible too, isn't it? That's what you call a hyperbole also. A hyperbole. These are different things that we see in the Word of God, and you have to understand. To understand both of those scriptures, you have to understand what kind of a figure of speech they are at that time. And we're going to study figures of speech as we study English etymology also. Father, I send this message out for your honor and glory. Help people to understand the language that they speak, and help them to understand your word in a more wonderful way. Please forgive us where we fail you. Please forgive me where I fail you. In Jesus' name.